You've done it all, and you have to know a little bit about everything. But home inspection is the process by which an inspector visually examines the readily accessible systems and components of a home. Are they a part-time inspector or are they a full-time inspector? All right, we're gonna get started here. First off, my name's Chris Parsons. I'm with Frontline Home Inspections. We are a multi-inspector, full-service inspection company based out of Fairlawn, but we cover Northeast Ohio. We have inspectors that live up by Chagrin Falls. We have a couple inspectors that live around Akron. I live in Bath personally. We have inspectors that live down in Medina. We're kind of all over the place, but we cover Northeast Ohio. I am frequently up in this area around here. I like when I come up here because I got a cousin. She lives about 4 miles from here, and I can go over there and have a cup of coffee with her real quick. And we grew up together. She's like my sister. She's only 1 year older than me. When we grew up, when I was a kid, I was living in Twinsburg, and she lived about a mile away, and I could always walk down to her house and go use her swimming pool and everything. It was just, she's like my sister. So it's nice to come up here and visit every now and again. So again, Chris Parsons, Frontline Inspections. Today we're gonna be talking about avoiding aggravations of home inspections. Are there any new realtors, like less than 3 years in here? Okay, cool. A couple of you, good. For the rest of you, you've probably already heard most of this, okay? But it'll be a good reinforcement, and maybe you'll pick up a new tip or trick or something like that, and you're gonna get your CE out of it. Okay, everybody here wants to make money, myself included, okay? Everybody wants to make money, and the only way that we're gonna make money is by closing deals, okay? I can help you close deals by forming good relationships and good communication skills between yourself as a buyer's representative or seller's representative and the inspector. A little bit about me. So I spent 20 years in the Marine Corps. I enlisted in 1995 straight out of high school. Went off, served time in Iraq, Afghanistan, and a whole lot of other places around the world. I grew up in Twinsburg when I was little, and then Peninsula when I was older. Graduated from Woodridge High School, went in the Marine Corps, spent 20 years there, and then decided to go and move my family back to Ohio after I retired. I've got 3 daughters. While I was in the Marine Corps, a side hobby that I picked up was real estate. I was buying rental properties. Every time I moved to a new duty station, I'd buy a foreclosure and flip it on the back end when I moved. So after I retired and deciding what I wanted to do, I said, well, let's go into real estate. So I went out and got my real estate license. I did that for 5 years. I really enjoyed being a real estate agent. But one day, while I was sitting there at a home inspection with Sean Hathaway, the owner of this company, Frontline Inspections, I was talking to him and saying, I'm getting the itch to go and try something different. He said, you ever thought about home inspections? I said, yeah, I have. So here I am now. I'm now a home inspector. I transferred over to the other side of the house, home inspections, okay? Jack of all trades. I'm a jack of all trades. As a home inspector, you guys are certainly jack of many trades, okay? I've walked in your shoes. I know all the things that you guys have to do. Everything from life coaches and meter maids and taxi drivers and therapists. It's what we all want to be, right? Marketing, appraisals, you've done it all, and you have to know a little bit about everything, okay? That's the life that you live right now. But reality, we're all just, sometimes we're all putting out those dumpster fires, okay? Work together as a team, we can put them out together. In a nutshell, we're going to talk a bit about some of the inspection process, how it relates to selling a home, buying a home, things that we can do to go and help each other out. This slide deck is built by the state. We're allowed to add to it. We cannot delete from it. Some of the verbiage that's in here isn't really used in this regional area. Maybe they use it down Columbus or Cincinnati or whatnot. So you might see some terms in here, you kind of scratch your head. He doesn't know what he's talking. Sorry, we didn't build the slide deck. For the most part, it's built by the state. It's pre-approved. That's what we have to teach to. Okay, so that's my disclaimer on some of the sentences and everything in here. Okay. What is a home inspection? Home inspection is the process by which an inspector visually examines the readily accessible systems and components of a home in accordance with the standards of practice. Standards of practice, that is the bare minimum requirements of what a home inspector will inspect inside of a home, okay? When you sign up for a home inspection, your home inspector is most likely sending out all kinds of attachments and addendums and things of that nature. And if you actually click on it and read it, which nobody ever does, it'll spell out what the standards of practice are. What the minimum requirements for a home inspection are. Inspecting the HVAC systems, inspecting the roof, the grading, the doors, the windows, flooring systems, all the different components of the home. It's going to spell out for you exactly what the standards of practice are. we have to do at a minimum those required tasks. We cannot subtract for it, but we can add to it. For instance, walking on a roof. It is never required for an inspector to walk on a roof, not once. Do some inspectors walk on roofs? Absolutely. Will I? Sometimes, sure. But if it's like a 3-story roof with a high pitch, I got a family I want to go home to. I'm putting my drone on that roof, okay? So, you know, some things are going to be at the discretion, especially when it comes to safety. If there's ever an unsafe, like a week ago, there was standing water in a basement of a home. It was 1888 home, so it was more like a cellar rather than a basement, right? There's standing water down there and 2 electric panels there. I'm not opening those panels. I'm not going to stand in water and open an electric panel. Take a picture of it, make note of it, you know, look at the visual components of it, but I'm not opening that panel. It's a safety consideration, okay? So just little things like that. Avoiding the aggravations. Having a home inspection is like giving a home a physical checkup. Inspector may recommend repair, replacement, or further evaluation by a specialist. Frequently, we will recommend specialist. Can anybody in here give me an example of when an inspector would recommend a specialist?
Fireplace.
Fireplace? Sure. Yeah. Foundation, absolutely. Call a structural engineer, right? Yeah, if there's a Boeing or something like that, we're going to recommend that structural engineer to go and come in and take a look at it. When you are interviewing home inspectors, everybody's got that list of their preferred home inspectors, and every now and again, maybe you're going to bump somebody off, or maybe somebody wants to go and take you out for coffee, and hey, let me tell you all the great things about our company. Things that you should consider about the home inspector when you're talking to them. Professional training. Do they do any training, or is it all just online? Do they actually do side-by-side training with roofers, with HVAC, with plumbing, things like that? You want to know that type of information. What is their experience? How many years? Me, I'm still pretty green around the ears as far as I'm concerned. I've only been doing this 2 years. I've done over 600 inspections in those 2 years, okay? But I would still consider myself fairly new because it's only been 2 years, okay? How many inspections? Well, I just told you that. Is property inspection their only business? Are they a part-time inspector or are they a full-time inspector? That can be important. Do they belong to any professional organizations? Hopefully they belong to at least NACHI or InterNACHI or one of the professional organizations that are out there for the job they're doing. Are they required to complete? Of course they are. Everybody knows that we've got licensing requirements in Ohio. Same as realtors, we have to do continuing education requirements and everything. I think that was what was put on the slide before the license requirement came out. They probably need to update their slide deck. The 3 Ds on the inspection format: detection, description, direction. So the front door was keyed on the interior. Therefore, it is a fire hazard because if there's ever a fire, you'd have to have your keys to get out of the home. Recommend repair or replacement by a licensed contractor or handyman. In a nutshell, that's basically the 3 Ds right there. And if you've ever read an inspection report, it's probably in some format very similar to that, where we've detected the problem, we've described it, and we're providing description of how to go and do the repair, or who to talk to for doing the repair. Setting expectations for the buyer. You've got the inspection agreement. With the inspection agreement, the buyer will be agreeing to a specific set of requirements as far as what we will be doing, which includes the standard of practice, which I kind of touched off on earlier, okay? The standard of practice is going to describe the bare minimum requirements of what we're doing. The scope of the inspection, that's your general home inspection. That's, top to bottom general home inspection. Now, if we're going to be doing any ancillary inspections, ancillaries are going to be your radon, your mold, your pest, your sewer scope, all those little extra add-ons and everything. There will be extra agreements and everything for those, okay? Want to make sure that we're communicating well between the realtor and the inspector as far as those ancillaries go. Markets shift and change, homes set expectations. Some homes are just so hot that, you've got 100 showings the first 48 hours and you're doing a general inspection for informational purposes only or something like that. Or maybe the home's been sitting on the market for 3 months and you can get whatever you want done on it, okay? I want you to go and communicate with your inspector, talk to them about what the conditions are for that contract. Oftentimes we don't get that communication, we don't know what's going on. Out of the inspectors in my office, 2 of us are former realtors. We hold monthly training within our inner office and everything, covering recent trends, topics, what have you. And frequently, one of the training topics is going to be, from the perspective of a realtor, what's the expectation for an inspector? And myself and the other inspector, we'll get up and we'll talk to all the guys about what the expectations are. This is how contracts are. This is what an ROC is. Because for the inspectors that have never been in the real estate world, they don't understand what an ROC is. They don't understand that there's a process of actions that happen after an inspection, okay? And so this is, these are the ramifications of the inspection and how it affects the deal. So those ancillary inspections, it's really important for you guys to go and communicate with us if you want them, if you don't want them, how the contract was written. Was it written with a general inspection for informational purposes only? If, hey, please don't ask for my client to go and add on, rate on, things like this because X, Y, Z, these are the circumstances. We understand, we get it, but you need to go and communicate that stuff to us, okay? Ultimately, as we all know, the client decides what the client decides, okay? But if we work together as a team, we can come up with solutions for those situations, okay? One instance right now, because we fully understand that there's with the current market situation, that a lot of people are only doing general and they don't want to add anything onto it, but they still want that peace of mind by doing radon, mold, pest, whatever the extra ancillaries are. We'll offer those after closing at the same cost as if it was an add-on inspection rather than a standalone inspection. Because there's a price difference between add-on inspection and standalone inspection, okay? So we'll offer that as a peace of mind afterwards. That's just one of the ways that we can work with you if we communicate well between inspector and agent. Role of the agent to the buyer. Agent can help deter buyer freakout syndrome. No house is perfect, what to expect when inspecting. Unless it's a new build, you're buying a used house. And you've got to be able to go and convey that to your client, okay? Let them know that no house is perfect. The inspector's going to come in here. They're going to find all kinds of deficiencies. That's their job. They're going to give you an honest opinion of the condition of the home, okay? They're going to be looking at the outlets. They're going to be looking at the windows. They're going to be looking at the doors. They're going to be poking the head in the attic, which we haven't done during that 30-minute walkthrough that we did, that 30-minute showing, and we don't know what's going to go on up there. Usually that's the one big unknown is the attic space, right? Because nobody ever pokes their head in the attic unless it's a walk-up or something, okay? So make sure you're setting those expectations for your buyer, that they know when, before the inspection even occurs, what the process is, what the inspector is going to be doing. Educating the buyer in the process, just like we were just talking about, discussing closing, making the state disclosure statement available. If there's anything pertinent on the disclosure that we as inspectors should know about it, please share that. We don't have access to that, okay? So if there's anything pertinent on there, make sure you're sharing that. Age of systems, that helps, right? Roof inspections, when we're looking at roofs, if you happen to know the age of the roof, clue us in, all right? We are making an educated guess on the age of the roof, okay? And it's based off of experience, and there's telltale signs that we look at. We do specific side-by-side training with roofers that help train us to go into what are the signs to look for, fraying around the edges and granular loss and, different things like that that kind of clue us in on the age of roof, but roofs don't come with the date timestamp of when they were, installed or anything like that. So, that's why we approximate roof ages. It's 10 to 15 years old, or it's less than 10 years old, or we think it's more than 20 years old. And it's going to be based on the condition of the roof as it sits. Sometimes we'll come across roofs that are legitimately 5 years old, but they sure look 10 years old because they've just had a lot of excess of wear and tear. Maybe because of, branches that are scraping against it from the tree that's too close to the house, or there's been just a lot of hailstones or whatever else. So we're providing that estimate of what the age of the roof is based on wear and tear. So if you actually know the age of the roof, clue us in. Attending the inspection. Should the buyer attend the inspection? Absolutely. Please. even just for that last 30 minutes. There is a massive difference in communication as an inspector when I'm doing that briefing at the end, going over all the information between someone that's standing right there in front of me and I can point and show them exactly what I'm talking about versus doing something over the phone or just sending them a report and them saying, oh, I'll just read it. I don't want to talk to him. Huge difference, okay? Excuse me. If anybody follows any of our social media, you'll see a post that Sean, the owner of our company, recently put out. He tracks a lot of data and everything, and this was a really great one that I was loving. Depending on which stat you're looking at or which source and everything, about 17% of homes do not close currently, okay? About 17% of homes don't close. Internally, the metrics that we track, from the inspections that we do about 4 to 5%. Okay, so nationwide, we're looking at 17% of homes that don't close. We do about 4 to 5%. And a lot of that has to do with communication. Just yesterday, I was on the phone talking to an out-of-state client. They live in New York. They already own a couple of rental properties around the Cleveland over on the west side. I had just done an inspection a week ago. It was a duplex, about 100 years old roughly. It was in overall not too bad shape. Okay, I do a lot of duplexes throughout Cleveland, so I can very much talk about the differences in duplexes throughout the Cleveland area. And on average, this was in pretty good shape. They were ready to go and walk away from the deal because of a joist issue. Okay, down the basement, as plumbers do, they had cut a joist, right? So they could run the drain underneath the plumber. So you had this joist up against the house, and they completely severed it in half. And on one side, they had put support with the beams and everything, which was as appropriate because there's no way to sister the joist, so they were providing support to the surrounding joist. But they didn't put support on the other side. So you got the bathtub here, 8 pounds per gallon of water, plus a human being put that in there. That's gonna cause a lot of pressure on the joists that are right there, okay? So the joist is completely separated. They got support on this side, but on this side. So what's the fix? Put more support on this side. Super easy fix, couple $100 fix in materials, okay? They're ready to go and walk away from the deal. And I guess they had I don't know the full story on the pricing and everything, but they had gotten a pretty good pricing on this house. So just by being able to go and explain that to them and kind of walk them through the steps of what the repair is, you know, helps to go and kind of save the deal and make sure that they understand that. And if they had been there physically present, it would have been a no-brainer. If I had been able to physically walk them through to them and show them rather than trying to go and look at this picture, look up in the right-hand corner, see where it's cut there, and just trying to walk them through that way. That was just another way that we were able to go and help with that. And so that's just illustrating why it's important. Have your buyer there, please. If at all possible, have your buyer there. Do they need to be there for the whole inspection? Of course not. That last 30 minutes, that's going to be important. Who should the buyer to bring to the inspection? Buyers may desire other third-party opinions, and inspectors will respect that. However, too many guests may distract the inspector and the client. Anybody ever had an inspection where the entire family shows up? Mom, dad, brothers, sisters, everybody? Yeah. Please help us out and do some control management on that, okay? Let us focus and do our job. Of course, the client can bring out whomever they want. If they want to bring a plumber, bring a plumber. If they want to bring a roofer, bring a roofer. Okay, by all means, bring those experts in. We fully appreciate that and encourage that sometimes even. Okay, but when father-in-law is showing up with their flashlight and their tape measure, and it can be a bit of a distraction sometimes. When did you see this? Did you see that? What do you think about this? And that 2-hour inspection turns into a 4-hour inspection because we're not able to focus and do the job that we're there to do. Managing those expectations, kind of going back to, they're buying a used house. We're gonna find stuff, okay? Even on brand new builds, we get hired to find stuff, okay? The closest I've ever come to a perfect inspection was on a brand new build. I only had one single finding, and it was the furnace was undersized. That was the closest I've ever come to a perfect inspection where I could walk out and say, there's nothing wrong with this place. Most inspections, you're gonna have 20, 30, you guys have been there, you've seen the inspection reports. They can be pretty lengthy or they can be pretty small. The hope always is smaller. We're gonna talk a bit about how to go make those smaller sometimes too. It's all about perspective. Whoops, did I skip one? Answering your client's questions. Even the best inspectors do not know everything. Every day is a learning day. Every day is a learning day. As an agent, every day is a learning day. As an inspector, every day is a learning day. Training is continuous. Inspectors should be able to point the client in the right direction to solve any mysteries. Good inspectors provide solutions or at least a path to the solution. Your inspector should be able to provide advice or at least point them in the direction of where to get the correct advice. Who to call, which specialty, which trade, where to look, as well as possible solutions if they want to YouTube and do things themselves. Okay, so hopefully your inspector is able to do that and be able to go and clearly articulate that through good communication. Explain to the buyer that the summarization of the inspection report during the last half hour of the inspection process is very important, and they need to be present if possible. Just, again, drilling that home, make sure that you have the client there if at all possible. Should the buyer's agent be there? Should the listing agent be there? Does anybody ever want the listing agent there at their inspection? No, yeah. You're going to see some more slides where they're talking about whether the seller should be there. Yeah, oh, much worse, right? Yeah, I know. It just creates that tension, especially if the buyer is there. Sometimes I'll go into inspections and it'll just be me and the seller. Because the buyer's agent isn't there, the client isn't there, it's just me and the seller. The seller's there to go and provide access, just to open up the doors and everything. Sometimes they follow me around, sometimes they ask questions, sometimes they just sit around, read the newspaper and drink coffee, okay? We are bound to client confidentiality rules, so we are not going to discuss the inspection report results, findings, or anything with anyone other than the client and their representative, buyer's agent, okay? So, if those circumstances arise, if they ask questions and everything, we're going to be vague, we're going to avoid the questions, and we might just bluntly say, I'm not allowed to discuss this with you because of confidentiality reasons and everything, unless the client gives me permission to do so. If push comes to shove, we'll break out that one-liner, and usually that quiets them down and everything. But as a listing agent, please control your sellers, okay? Especially if they insist, no, I want to be there. If they want to be there, it's their house, it's their right and everything, but please explain the process to them and what is allowed, what isn't allowed, okay? Please help the process out by explaining those situations fully to them. Negotiations, I'm not going to drill on this. That's negotiations, that's your specialty, okay? Like I was saying earlier, like internally in our office, we specifically train on what happens after an inspection regarding negotiations, ROCs, things of that nature, so that all of our inspectors understand what happens after the inspection, and why there's certain phone calls and why are they asking these questions. That's another thing. If it's actually one of our internal goals that if you have to go and call us after the inspection, we didn't do something right. We didn't communicate something right. Our photo didn't tell a story right. Our inspection report didn't tell something right. That inspection report and the briefing should answer 100% of the questions. That's the goal. It doesn't always happen. There's sometimes follow-up questions and things like that, but it's always a goal of ours to go and make sure that our communication is so perfect that all questions are answered when we walk out the door at the end of the day. Where do we go from here? Explaining the options to the buyer, additional estimates, and this is all part of the briefing at the end. Just make sure that all questions are fully answered. One way that you as a buyer's agent can do that is, especially for the seasoned agents and everything, you've heard the same speech over and over again during debriefings at the end. You've already heard the same thing that we're going to be recommending as far as, if you've got ungrounded outlets, what's the solution going to be? Anybody? GFCI. GFCI where?
Within 6 feet.
Okay. Bathrooms, laundry room, yeah. Okay. How about a whole home surge protector at the panel? That's an alternative solution, right? Or GFCI strategically placed in where you're going to be plugging in your smartphone at night. There's lots of different solutions and everything, but you can start to go and prep your clients by letting them know about, hey, we already know that there's ungrounded wiring in the house because you can see those two-pronged outlets all over the place. So they're going to be they're going to talk to you about GFCIs. They're going to talk to you about a whole home surge protector that's installed down at the panel. They're going to be providing all these type of information and whatnot. That way, when it comes to time for the inspection, we complete the inspection and we start briefing them. First off, it's going to make you look like the hero, okay? Because you've already briefed them and told them everything that we're about to tell them, or at least some of the things. So when we start talking about the surge protectors and whatnot, they usually chime in, oh yeah, Susan already told me about that. That's awesome, that's great, okay? And then we can kind of, expand on it and, validate everything that you had just told them. Everybody's got a list. Everybody's got a list of their preferred roofer, handyman, electrician, chimney guy, what have you. We do too. We're gonna be a resource for you, okay? Your inspector should be a resource for you. If you find yourself in a gap where you're not sure who to go and call, reach out to your inspector. They should also have a list. Preparing the seller. Full access, schedule, and house. Selling agent may or may not be present during the inspection, depends on the discretion of the seller, get firsthand knowledge of issues. So if you're the agent for the seller, the listing agent, again, it is normally best that seller's agent are not present during the inspection. But please prepare your sellers nonetheless so that they understand, again, what the process is. Most likely they're buying something on the back end, right? So that you should be briefing them on that anyways. But there are some, as you know, there's some slight variations in how you should be prepping your sellers for the inspection, such as letting them know, hey, this inspector is probably going to be showing up. I know it's scheduled for 9 a.m., probably going to be there at 8:30. Okay, so if you see some strange guy with a tool belt walking around taking pictures of your house at 8:30 in the morning, that's normal, okay? They're going to be walking around in your backyard and looking at your roof and looking at the seams of your windows and just looking like they're nosy, but they're there working, okay? Inspector responsibilities to the seller. Respect the property. Boy, if they're not putting on shoe covers or taking off their shoes at the front door, something's wrong, okay? Do no damage. Don't break anything. I have a thing with windows. I don't force windows, okay? So if I walk up to a window and I unlock it and it's not opening nice and smooth, I'm automatically tagging it as difficult to operate or would not open or something like that because I don't want to break anything, okay? Now, if you want to go over there and try and force it open because it hasn't been open in 15 years because they're constantly running their air conditioner and it's just stuck, that's on you. I am not going to force a window because I'll break it, okay? Leave the property as you found it. Answer seller's questions about the report after it has been issued. Again, we have that confidentiality with the client being the paying client, the buyer, usually, which is typically the buyer, right? But if they give us permission to go and talk about it, we're going to talk about it, okay? For instance, a week ago, I did a pre-listing inspection for the seller, right? And then they use that as part of their disclosures, that pre-listing inspection, so that all prospective buyers had access to the inspection report. And because they've made it public, that gives me permission to go and discuss it with anybody and everybody that calls about it, okay? Utilities on. There have been a rash of problems recently with walking into homes that are vacant and the gas is off, the electric is off, the water is off, some portion or all of the utilities are off. When a buyer schedules a home inspection, they're expecting all utilities to be on. And if you read in your contracts, most every contract out there has that clearly written that all utilities should be on for the inspection period. If we go in there and we can't inspect it, most likely the buyer is going to ask us to go and come back out for a reinspection after the utilities are turned on. There's a cost for that. There is a reinspection fee for that, and there should be, okay? We want to kind of drill home the fact that we get paid to go out and do these inspections, and if we show up and can't do the inspection, they have to come back out, that's lost income for us, okay? It's lost time and income for us. It's a huge inconvenience. So we do, a lot of companies do charge reinspection fees. Okay, it's usually like $150 or something, not, just enough to go and kind of sting, but not enough that it's going to, hurt a deal or anything like that. But it's there to go and kind of remind you that please make sure your utilities are on. Pilots are lit, have all components active. If there's any items that cannot be inspected, it's going to be noted in the report, such as, couldn't inspect the furnace because there were so many boxes stacked in front of it from decluttering that we couldn't even get to it. Things like that will be noted. If there are parts of the home that we should not enter, we'll respect that, okay? This is a simple annotation on a report stating that, area could not be entered at seller's request or whatnot. Maybe you got an infant sleeping in the room, or maybe, that's the home office and the wife is working today and she cannot be disturbed due to, a very important meeting or something like that. We're going to annotate that, and that's up to you as the agents and everything to kind of negotiate whether or not that's acceptable, or we have to go and come back at a later point or whatnot. But if there's circumstances like that, make sure you're discussing that with your sellers, that if you do have those circumstances, you need to communicate that with the buyer's agent and everything, and the inspector, so that everybody is under agreement that this is the circumstance, either this is acceptable or it's unacceptable. If it's unacceptable, well, then what's the resolution? Is it reinspecting at a later time, or should we reschedule the entire inspection for a day where it's more convenient? Security systems, obviously, make sure that those are turned off or codes are provided. Provide clear and unrestricted access to attics. Attics. Please brief your sellers to clear out the space for the attics, okay? Whether it's in the garage or in the closet or wherever, okay? If it's just a couple of towels and some jackets and everything, we're going to, very delicately move those and set them off to the side, do what we need to do in the attic, and then we're going to put them back, okay? But again, it's usually because of decluttering. That's usually why we can't get into an access, because you've gone through the decluttering process and you've stacked all the boxes in the garage, but now we can't get in the garage attic because there's 200 boxes stacked in the garage or whatever the case may be. So please make sure you're having that conversation. Same goes for electric panels. Make sure there's clear access to an electric panel. Again, if it's just a simple matter of moving a clothes rack or whatever it is that's impeding our access, that's fine, okay? But if it's a matter of hiring a moving company to go and come in and move things out of the way, we're going to take a picture and annotate it that's inaccessible. That's just the way it is, okay? So please just make sure you have that good communication. Exterior closets, garage, gates, yards, furnaces, water heaters, everything that should be inspected should have free and clear access. Remember I was talking about how to go and shrink that list, that inspection list? These are some simple things, okay? Light bulbs. Fix a light bulb, please. If it's just a simple light bulb or something like that, because if I turn on a light switch and that light's not turning off, now I have to go and tag it as light receptacle inoperable. And it's just a light bulb, folks. But as you know, when you're doing that briefing at the end, do you want a list that has 50 items on it or 25 items on it? You want that 25 items so that your client isn't getting overwhelmed with all these long lists of things, even though 25 of them are super simple, little easy things to fix, like a loose doorknob or a door that doesn't latch properly, or a window that doesn't fully open because they haven't opened in 15 years and so it's stuck and I don't want to break it while I'm opening it, okay? Anything that you can do to reduce that inspection list is going to make that inspection list much smaller, and it's going to make that transaction go that much more easily, okay? So think about that from the listing side, okay? And when you're briefing your clients, have them go around, have them check all their windows, check all their light switches, check all their doors, and just make that list, do their own little internal inspection, if you will, to go and just do a function check on all the basic stuff of the house. They don't have to go crawling around the attic. They don't have to do any of that type of stuff, but anything that they can do to go and just prep the house other than, you know, putting up some fresh paint and having the carpets cleaned, anything they can do to go and functionally make sure the house is in good working order to go and reduce that inspection list and reduce the stress on the sale of the house will help you in the long run. Remote controls for fireplaces. Oh God, please make sure those are available. It's so annoying when I go to try and operate a fireplace and I can't find the remote control if it's one of the electronic ones or whatnot, okay? If there's circuit breakers that are off and there's a logical reason, put a Post-it note up, put some painter tape next to the panel, jot down why. If it's logical, okay, cool. It's sometimes just takes a quick explanation of what's going on and okay, yeah, we'll check it out. Like, yeah, okay, and then we fully explain it to the client and everybody moves on. Clutter. Try not to mop immediately before an inspection. It can interfere with moisture meters if we're using moisture meters, okay? It just increases the humidity level in the home. Cats, dogs. I love cats, I love dogs. I got a zoo in my house. I got chickens, I got turkeys, I got cats, I got dogs, I got 3 daughters. But if I'm opening a door and the cat runs off and I don't know if that cat's allowed to be out, guess what I'm doing for the next 30 minutes running around the neighborhood? Please lock up the cats, lock up the dogs. Yeah. Should the seller be present for the inspection? We kind of touched on this one a little bit. Seller can definitely slow the inspection by tagging along. Hey, if I fix this while you're here, can we take it off at the end? You know, just, you know, little things like that. Anybody ever had a fun experience with a seller at the inspection? I see you making a face over there. Yeah. So that's you know, there's pros and cons to everything. These are the pros, right? That they immediately can answer questions for us. You know, just the other day I was at an inspection, the seller was hanging out there, and I had a question for him about, you know, there was evidence of moisture leakage and damage on the first floor below the second floor bathroom, and so I just asked him, have you had to do any you know, plumbing repairs recently? So yeah, about 2 months ago, the second floor bathroom was leaking. This is what I did. This is how I patched it up, but I never got around to going patching up all those the stains on the floor, on the ceiling on the first floor bathroom. So I didn't ask him specifically about that, but his response matched exactly what I was looking for and everything. And it was all logical and made sense, and, you know, matched up with what I was seeing, you know, the evidence I was seeing, and, you know, it all aligned and everything. So there are advantages of it. However, at an inspection, as a buyer's agent, can I just ask you and then you relay that question? You know, and then you can get an answer just same as I just did without having the aggravation of having a seller at the inspection creating possible tension. Will a home inspector recommend whether or not to purchase a property? Do you think a home inspector should answer that question? No. Yeah, no. Perceptions, right? You know, half full, half empty. Everybody has their own breaking points. Everybody has their own skill level. Everybody has their own definition of how deep your pocketbook is, okay? So no, we should never be answering a question like that directly, okay? And as you know, home inspections are not pass-fail, okay? We're gonna provide a list, an honest list of what's going on with the property. And it's totally up to you as the buyer, as the buyer's agent, to go and help work through that process of digesting the information and what the process will be, how to attack that list, and who does any repairs. How much to fix everything? It's another common question. How much do you think it will cost to go and replace the air conditioner? How much should it cost to go and replace that, to repair that leaning chimney? Questions that we shouldn't be answering, okay? We can kind of give, you know, if we have direct knowledge, direct relevant knowledge, sure, we can answer that question. But if not, that question should be referred to a contractor, okay? And those prices, as you know, are going to vary, and that's why you always say get 3 quotes, because the prices will vary depending on who you talk to. Repairs. We can provide solutions, we can provide recommendations, we can provide names of contractors to call, but we should not be telling you exactly how to go and fix something, okay? There are multiple ways to go and fix any type of deficiency within a home. And you know, like if it's an electrical issue inside the electric panel, one electrician might have one suggestion and a different electrician might have a different suggestion, okay? Maybe adding a sub panel or maybe rewiring this, or, you know, everybody's gonna have their own different suggestions and everything, okay? So just keep in mind that there's no one definitive answer for just about any deficiency in a home, okay? So we're gonna talk a little bit about some of the common defects in a home. Grading and drainage. Foundation issues, we were talking about that a little bit earlier, which most of the time it's directly related to grading and drainage, okay? Whether or not the gutters are reacting the way that they're supposed to, whether or not the grading on the outside of the home is making sure that water is moving away from the foundation rather than towards it. And it's not always just soil, sometimes it's concrete or asphalt or hard surfaces of different types that are not installed properly and causing water to move towards the foundation. Wind damage, mostly talking about, you know, trees and things of that nature. The deck of death. Yeah, that one's horrible. We've seen some bad ones, not that bad. I've seen some bad ones. All electric work should be done by a licensed and insured electrical contractor, please. It's usually very obvious when you open up a panel whether the work's been done by an electrician or by a homeowner / handyman. Double tapping, that's usually the most common defect that we come across inside of panels. People will do double taps on the breakers because they've run out of space. There's no more space to go and add another breaker. And rather than adding a sub panel, which is the proper way of doing it, they just double tap, which can cause overusage of the breaker, burning, arcing, all kinds of problems can come from double tapping. Melting. Critters. Roof defects. We don't have a lot of flat roofs, not for residential around here, not in Northeast Ohio. Most of our roof defects are going to be hail damage, shingles that are lifting and curling from wind, which can just get worse over time from wind, you know, especially with wind and rain and things like that affecting it. A lot of, you know, granular loss and fraying of fiberglass around the edges showing age. Yeah. Stucco's not big out here. I had this happen on this is not my house, but I had this happen on my house 2 years ago. I did a total renovation of my house, and we relocated one of the bathrooms to a different side of the house. And when the plumbers put the vent through the roof, they never put the boot on around it, and so it was open just like this. I finally pointed it out to them. We hadn't moved back in the house yet. We vacated the house while they were doing the renovation. They finally put the boot on it, and then when we did move in it, there was pressure problems and everything. Come to find out, they had left the balloon inside the vent when they did the pressure test in the house. So somebody had to go and climb up there and pop the balloon to go and get that out of there. AC, furnace. Really important to make sure you're getting your AC and your furnace regularly serviced. If you are prepping a house for sale, just get it done. Just have someone come out and service the AC and the furnace. And please use a reputable company, okay? And have that packet of information sitting out or provided to the sellers. That'll provide peace of mind, okay? Just one more little way that you can help provide peace of mind to go and help the transaction move along. Unless it's a brand new furnace or something like that, but if it's 5 years older, get it serviced and have that paperwork available. It'll definitely help out with things. Improper maintenance and repair. Have all house repairs done by professional licensed insurance contractors. Make sure that they are fully informed when you make any do-it-yourself repairs. Most times money you think that you are saving up front is eaten up later. Absolutely. Anybody have any horror stories about bad maintenance or bad home repairs? No? Really? Okay. Had a bathroom renovation done when it was on a slab foundation. When the bathroom was torn out, they didn't do proper fill underneath the bathroom. So when they put the shower pan in, they installed the shower pan. They did all the tile work. Everything was great. And then after a little bit of usage and everything, tile started cracking. The whole thing started sinking, because they didn't do the backfill and everything. When they broke open the slab underneath, they didn't redo the slab properly. And so basically the whole shower was sinking down into the foundation underneath it. Okay. So that was a fun one. Duct tape fixes everything. Structure. So I'm going to say I disagree with part of this statement. Okay. Structural damage is probably the most expensive type of damage to repair. If not done properly, your house can collapse. Anybody had a house collapse from structural damage? I'm just not a fan of that last little statement right there. So yeah, but structural problems, they are obviously a very serious and real problem and everything. If we come across that dreaded horizontal crack with a little bit of bowing and everything, what are the repairs for that? Waterproofing, that's one possible repair. Anything else? Beams, straps. Yep, injection, yep. All kinds of different methods that are out there. But for the most part, who's making that recommendation? Structural engineer, 100%. Yeah, we want to make sure that the right person is assigned to that job to go and provide their recommendations on how to go and provide that repair. Structural engineer, if it's an actual structural problem and not just some minor little settlement crack or something like that. If it's just thermal cracking, seal it and walk away. Okay. But if it's an actual structural problem and everything, call out a structural engineer. Structural engineer will provide that structural report that they can hand off to a contractor and have the contractor do the work.
That might come into play. It's one deal that I was doing 15, 20 years ago, where they had to jack up the whole house.
Yeah.
So technically the house probably could have collapsed because the whole house was jacked up.
Yeah.
When you're doing all four walls.
Yeah.
So that would be worst case scenario that I've ever seen a house when it collapsed.
A year ago, I was going out to do just a very quick visual inspection on an investment property. It was basically just a walkthrough, jot down a few notes, and it was like a 10-minute job. But I come walking up to it, and there's like yellow tape all around the house. I'm like, okay, what's going on here? And as I'm walking around, the entire side, one side of the foundation wall had collapsed into the basement. So on the outside, I'm looking into the basement from outside, I'm like, not going inside. Can it be repaired though? Absolutely. Anything can be repaired, right? Yeah. Yep. Just got to throw some supports on it, put up some new foundation walls, and you're good, right?
Our neighbor's house just happened. It was a finished basement. They bought it, had an inspection.
Yeah.
Nothing unusual. 2 years later, the basement wall caved in.
Yeah. I get worried when I walk into an older home with a finished basement. I can't see through that drywall. There's only so much I can do. I can throw a thermal camera on it. I can, throw a moisture meter on it. There's tools that I can use and technology that I can use, but you can't see what you can't see. And it's always a concern, but you inspect what you can see. Anybody know what this is called right here?
Support beam?
It's the main beam. Yeah, it's a support beam. Somebody decided to go and cut through it and put some ductwork. The worst one that I saw was a homeowner he finished the basement himself, and he had partitioned, different sides and everything in the basement. And as part of that partition, he had a doorway between one room and the other, and the doorway was part of the main beam, and he had cut it out so that he could have his door frame fit in there. He cut the main support beam for his door frame. And so I had to be the bearer of bad news that you need a new beam. Sorry. If you're torching things, that's usually bad. Bad pier supports. Yeah. Talking about setting expectations, I have this firm belief that there's no such thing as a house without mice. Every house has mice. It's just a matter of being proactive about it, okay? Proactive in the measures of, make sure you're setting out traps or poisons or things like that. I can go into any house anywhere in Northeast Ohio and I will find evidence of mice somewhere, okay? Whether it's droppings or tunneling in the insulation, they're there somewhere, whether you realize it or not. So just be proactive about it. So just make sure, if you have a client that's really adverse to pests and mice and things like that, let me know about that. I'll try not to scare them or anything like that. But again, going back to that, make sure you're communicating about your client to the inspector so we have an understanding. That's important. Those things, we hate them, okay? The reason people install them is because that's what gets shipped with the vanity from China. So everybody gets their vanity from Home Depot and they're like, oh, it already comes with the plumbing, let me install this. It's not good plumbing practice. Those things get caught up with hair and gunk and funk, and then you go to snake it and it's a real thin membrane, it's just gonna poke right through, then you're gonna have a leak and whatnot. Hot water tanks, what are the things that you always see? Missing pan if it's in a finished space or second floor, yeah. Anything else? The temperature pressure relief valve. Yep, temperature pressure relief valve, always missing that. A lot of older homes, not having the proper seal around the flue, so you got carbon monoxide possibly coming back into the house. Those are common problems. Water. As you know, water is talk to any insurance agent or whatnot. I think I saw something for an insurance person around here somewhere. Russell Insurance, there it is. Water can be, the most expensive danger to a home, okay? They can cause the most amount of damage to a home. So when I'm talking to clients and they're saying, well, what do you think you should prioritize as far as, what goes on here? For me personally, it's almost always gonna be water, anything, even if it's just a corroded fitting, because a small drip can turn into a big drip, and it usually happens while you're on vacation, okay? And so for me, water is always gonna be those things that you fix, even if it's just a simple little small fitting or something like that. Just make sure you can take care of any type of water issues. Bad roof. Attics, the unknown area that you don't really get to see during your showings and everything. So some of the things that we're looking at inside of attics are going to be the trusses, the framing, the ductwork, HVAC equipment if it's present, electrical, plumbing, insulation, pest. What's the kind of the scariest thing as a realtor when a home inspector comes crawling back out of an attic? What do you not want to hear? Mold, right? Yeah. Raccoons, yeah. Usually we're running out of the attic at that point. Yeah, mold. Nobody wants to go and hear about mold. And mold, usually what are the two primary causes for mold in an attic? Bathroom ventilation.
Too much insulation.
Too much insulation, possibly, sure, yeah. Or just airflow, too much or too little, usually too little, okay. Improper boot insulation, right, yeah, absolutely, yeah. So too much moisture in the attic, and moisture doesn't necessarily come from the bathroom vent, although that's usually the culprit. The bathroom vent, being ventilated into the attic space. I think they got a picture in here somewhere. Right there, yep. So, you know, the dreaded bathroom vent that's not ventilated to the exterior, and then we'll see mold all around that space and whatnot. Sometimes it could be something as simple as poor ventilation and or that humidifier that's mounted on the side of your furnace. They've got it cranked all the way up to like 80% humidity. Where do you think all that humidity is going? It's going up, and it's going in the attic. And if you don't have good ventilation, if your soffits are clogged or your ridge vent is clogged because it's, you know, bad, it's, you know, just clogged full of dust and debris and everything, then all that moisture is going to get trapped in the attic. Okay. Access, just drilling that home once again. Please make sure that attic access is available. Broken trusses. Is that a major deal? Yeah, it can be. Is it a major repair? No, not really. It's actually a pretty simple repair. As long as nothing major is shifted or anything like that, it's not that much different than repairing a joist down inside of a basement that's been split, which is typically going to be repaired by sistering, you know, running another beam along it and putting some lag bolts through it and everything. It's going to be a very similar process for repairing something like that. Code, the dreaded word, code inspections. Just because there's a sticker on the side of the drainage system, you know, on the side of the main sewer stack and everything, saying that the county passed it for inspection. Well, maybe that was 2 years ago, and in those 2 years' time, plumbing systems have changed, or there was a bathroom addition done that was never reported because there was no permit pulled, so the zoning inspector never came out. Or maybe the zoning inspector was really tired that day, or was just on his late for lunch or something like that, and here's your sticker, looks good, I'm out of here. You never know and everything, so don't always count on you know, little stickers and things like that to go and say that something's really good. You like that one? Yeah.
Run a bit of gasoline in a match.
Uh-huh, yeah. Make sure your buyers and sellers know what to expect. And I'll throw on there also make sure your home inspector knows what to expect. Talk to us about your client. I may have already said this, but I'm going to say it again. Tell us if they're a first-time home buyer. Tell us if they're very handy. Tell us if they have kids.
Tell me if he's an attorney. I sued 3 people, 3 inspectors before that.
Yep, so I can cancel that inspection. Now, tell us details about them. It doesn't really change the way that we do an inspection, but it may affect the way that we're briefing at the end, the way that we're talking to them, okay? The way that we make recommendations to them, okay? The more information that you can arm us with, the better that we can help to communicate with the client, okay? We're always going to give an honest opinion, no matter who the client is or what the situation is. But there are differences in the way that we speak to clients, right? Depending on who they are, what their circumstances are, first-time home buyer, fifth-time home buyer. They've already been down this road, you know, 5 other times and everything. Yeah, make sure that everything is accessible for the inspector. We've kind of drilled that home a little bit. Manage who's present and when. Yeah, it's always interesting when the dads show up, right? It's not a bad thing. I enjoy it, actually. I have fun with it.